The day my girlfriend announced her engagement to my brother, I was standing less than 20 feet away, and nobody knew who I was. Not because they couldn't recognize me, but because they had already decided I didn't matter. The ballroom erupted in applause. Champagne glasses lifted into the air. People smiled. People cheered. My parents were crying tears of joy. My younger brother, Ethan Carter, stood on stage in a tailored black suit with one arm wrapped around Emma's waist. Emma, the woman I had loved for 6 years, the woman who once promised she would marry me, the woman who was now wearing the engagement ring I had designed for her. My mother stood first. She walked onto the stage and hugged Emma tightly. "We've waited so long for this." Emma smiled. My father laughed. Ethan finally did it. As if I had never existed. As if the company Ethan was standing on top of hadn't been built on years of my work. As if Emma hadn't spent 6 years beside me. As if none of it had happened. The applause became louder. Everyone was happy. Except me. I stood near the back exit of the ballroom holding an invitation I should never have accepted. The words on the giant screen behind them burned into my eyes. "Congratulations to Ethan Carter and Emma Reynolds. A perfect match." Perfect match? I almost laughed. Because 3 years ago, Emma couldn't even stand being in the same room as Ethan. She called him irresponsible, immature, arrogant. 3 years ago, she used to tell me I was the only person she could rely on. Now she's marrying him. And the worst part? Nobody thought it was strange. Not my parents, not our relatives, not our friends, not even Emma. As if replacing me with my brother was the most natural thing in the world. Then Ethan raised his champagne glass. "Tonight isn't only about our engagement." The room quieted. He smiled confidently. "The board of directors has officially approved my appointment as CEO of Reynolds Technologies." The room exploded again. More applause, more cheers, more congratulations. I watched Emma look at him with pride. The same look she used to give me. The same look she gave me when we worked overnight together in a tiny rented office with broken air conditioning. Back when Reynolds Technologies was nothing. Back when it was only an idea. Back when I was the one building it. My chest tightened. Not because I still loved Emma, that feeling had died a long time ago. What hurt was realizing how easily people rewrote history. In their version, Ethan was the hero, Emma was the genius CEO, and I was simply the jealous older brother who couldn't keep up. Nobody mentioned that Ethan had joined only 2 years earlier. Nobody mentioned that every system keeping the company alive had been designed by me. Nobody mentioned that Emma's entire expansion strategy had been based on plans I created. Because successful people own the future, and failures own the blame. At least that's what everyone thought. Then something unexpected happened. Emma's eyes moved through the crowd. For a brief second she saw me. Her smile disappeared. Only for a second, but I saw it. I saw the guilt, the hesitation, the regret. And suddenly, I remembered the day everything started. The day she chose Ethan over me for the first time. The day I should have walked away. Instead, I stayed, and that mistake cost me 6 years of my life. 3 years earlier, if you had asked anyone who would inherit the Carter family's business empire, every single person would have given the same answer. Me, Noah Carter, the eldest son, the responsible son, the one who worked 16-hour days, graduated top of his class, never caused trouble, and most importantly, the one who actually built things. My younger brother, Ethan, was different. He was charming, funny, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make everyone laugh within 5 minutes. People loved him, especially my mother. Whenever Ethan made a mistake, it became a funny story. Whenever I achieved something, it became an expectation. At first, I didn't mind. That's how families work, right? At least, that's what I told myself. Back then, Emma and I had been dating for almost 3 years, and Reynolds Technologies was still a struggling startup. The company only had 22 employees. Most of our office furniture came from second-hand stores. Half our computers were outdated, and some months we weren't sure we'd make payroll. But we were happy, or at least I thought we were. I was the company's chief technology officer, Emma was CEO, and together we built everything. She handled investors, I handled products. The company existed because both sides worked. Many nights we slept inside the office, one old couch, one blanket, one dream. Those were my favorite memories. Emma used to sit beside me at 2 in the morning, drinking terrible coffee, smiling as she said, "When we become successful, don't change." And I would laugh. "What about you?" "I'll never change." Funny. Sometimes the biggest lies sound exactly like promises. The first crack appeared 6 months later, during my father's 60th birthday party, a huge event with almost 200 guests, business partners, relatives, friends. Everyone was there, including Emma. At the time, she and my family got along well, especially my mother, who loved showing Emma off. "This is Noah's girlfriend, our future daughter-in-law, our CEO." Every conversation sounded the same. Emma smiled politely. Everything seemed perfect, until Ethan arrived, late as always. He walked into the ballroom wearing a wrinkled suit and carrying a bottle of expensive wine. The moment he entered, everyone's attention shifted. Even my father smiled. Ethan finally showed up. The room immediately became louder, more energetic, more alive, as if the main character had arrived. I was used to it. What surprised me wasn't Ethan. It was Emma. For the first time, I noticed her watching him. Not romantically, not yet, but with curiosity. The kind of curiosity people have when they discover something unexpected. Ethan spent the entire night telling stories, making jokes, making people laugh. Even Emma laughed more than once. When the party ended, we drove home together. Halfway there, she suddenly asked, "Has Ethan always been like that?" I glanced at her. "What do you mean? He seems completely different from you." I laughed. "That's because he is." She looked out the window. "Interesting." At the time, I didn't think much about it. I should have, because looking back, that was the first moment everything started changing. A month later, Reynolds Technologies secured its first major investment. For a startup our size, it was life-changing. The entire office celebrated. Employees cheered, champagne bottles opened, people cried. Emma hugged me in front of everyone. "We did it!" No, we really did. For one night, I believed the future was ours. Then Ethan appeared again, this time inside the company. My father, as a board member, brought him. "Your brother needs experience." Those 6 words changed my life. Emma wasn't happy. In fact, she opposed it immediately. "He has no experience in tech. He doesn't understand our products. He'll become a distraction." This time, Emma defended me, and honestly, I loved her even more because of it. Unfortunately, my father didn't care. Ethan joined anyway, officially as a business development manager, unofficially as the boss's son. The first few weeks were a disaster. He missed meetings, arrived late, and even ignored deadlines. Several employees complained. Emma was furious. More than once, she came into my office and slammed reports onto my desk. "Your brother is impossible." I smiled helplessly. "Welcome to my childhood," she laughed. Back then, she genuinely disliked him, which is why what happened later became even harder to understand. Because Ethan slowly changed his strategy. He stopped trying to impress managers. He stopped trying to work hard. Instead, he focused on one person, Emma. At first, it was harmless. Coffee, small favors, helping organize events, making her laugh during stressful meetings. Nothing inappropriate, nothing obvious, nothing that could be criticized. Just hundreds of tiny moments that slowly became habits, and habits eventually become attachments. I didn't notice at first because I was busy, too busy. Every day I was building systems, managing engineers, solving technical crises, and protecting the company, while Ethan was becoming part of Emma's daily life. And by the time I finally realized what was happening, it was already too late. The first warning came from someone I never expected, a junior project manager named Claire, the youngest employee in the company. Quiet, smart, always observing. One evening, she knocked on my office door. "Noah, can I ask you something?" "Sure." She hesitated, then asked carefully, "Are you and Miss Reynolds okay?" The question immediately made my stomach tighten. I looked up. "What do you mean?" Claire seemed nervous. "Maybe I'm mistaken." "Say it." She swallowed. "Recently, Miss Reynolds spends more time with Ethan than with you." For a moment, I couldn't answer, because I had noticed it too. I had simply been making excuses. Emma is busy. Emma is stressed. Emma doesn't mean anything by it. Emma still loves me. Looking back now, I think I knew the truth long before I was willing to admit it. I just wasn't ready to lose 6 years of my life. So I kept lying to myself. A month later, Reynolds Technologies faced its first major crisis. One of our largest clients threatened to cancel a contract worth nearly $15 million. The entire company went into panic mode. For 2 straight weeks, I barely slept. I worked from the office, ate at the office, sometimes even showered in the office gym. The engineering team was falling apart, investors were demanding answers, employees were scared. Meanwhile, Emma was handling pressure from the board. We were both exhausted. One night around midnight, I finally solved the problem. I still remember the feeling. The bug that had been destroying our system for weeks suddenly made sense. 3 hours later, my team deployed the fix. The client stayed. The contract survived.
The company survived. I sat alone in my office, staring at my monitor, too tired to celebrate, too tired to move. Then I glanced through the glass wall. Emma's office was still lit. I smiled. Maybe we could finally go home together. Maybe things could feel normal again. When I reached her office door, I stopped. Emma wasn't alone. Ethan was sitting across from her. They were laughing. Laughing after the worst 2 weeks of my life. I stood there for several seconds. Neither of them noticed me. Then Ethan handed her a coffee. Emma smiled. Not the polite smile she gave investors. Not the professional smile she gave employees. The real one. The smile that used to belong to me. Something twisted inside my chest. I told myself I was overthinking again. So I knocked. Emma looked up. "Oh, Noah." Her tone felt strange. Not happy, not excited, just surprised. "I fixed it," I said. For a second, she blinked. Then her eyes widened. "The client?" "We kept them." Emma jumped up immediately. She hugged me, the old Emma, the Emma I missed. "We did it!" I smiled. Maybe everything was okay after all. Then Ethan stood. "Nice work, bro." Bro. I hated when he called me that, especially with that smile that always looked genuine and somehow never felt genuine. The next morning, the board held an emergency meeting. Everyone wanted to discuss the crisis. I wasn't expecting praise. I wasn't expecting applause. I just wanted to move on. Instead, I watched something strange happen. The chairman stood. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge Ethan." I frowned. The room applauded. Ethan smiled modestly. My confusion grew. The chairman continued. "Throughout this difficult period, Ethan provided critical support to management and helped stabilize team morale." More applause. I looked around the room. Then at Emma. She was clapping too. My stomach dropped. Support? Morale? I hadn't slept for 14 days. My team had nearly collapsed. I was the one fixing everything. Yet somehow Ethan was receiving recognition? After the meeting ended, I pulled Emma aside. "What was that?" She looked confused. "What?" "The board praising Ethan. He helped." I stared at her. "He helped?" "Yes." "Emma, I solved the crisis. And nobody is denying that." Her voice became defensive. "Ethan helped in other ways." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Other ways?" She frowned. "Why are you acting like this?" "Acting like this?" I looked at her for several seconds, then nodded. "You're right." And I walked away. Because I realized she genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. That scared me more than anything. A week later, my mother invited everyone to dinner, including Emma, including Ethan. The moment I arrived, I knew something was different. My mother was practically glowing. "Ethan, sit beside Emma." I froze. Ethan froze. Even Emma looked surprised. Mom quickly laughed. "Oh, I didn't mean anything by it." But she did. Everyone knew she did. And somehow nobody said anything. The dinner continued. Conversation flowed. Stories were told. People laughed. Then my mother suddenly asked Emma a question. "Who do you think understands you better?" The table became quiet. Emma looked confused. "What do you mean?" My mother smiled. "Between Noah and Ethan." The air immediately became heavy. I felt my heart slow. Emma laughed awkwardly. "That's a strange question. Just answer." I waited. Everyone waited. Emma thought for a second, then said something that changed everything. "Ethan is easier to talk to." Silence. Complete silence. I don't think anyone realized what those words did to me, because they weren't supposed to matter. But they did. A lot. I had spent 6 years supporting her, building her company, sacrificing my own dreams, and when someone asked who understood her better, she chose Ethan without hesitation. I smiled, pretended it didn't hurt, pretended I was mature, pretended I was okay. But that night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the city lights until 3 in the morning, because a terrible thought had entered my mind. And once it appeared, I couldn't make it leave. Maybe I wasn't being replaced. Maybe I had already been replaced, and I was simply the last person to realize it.
The next morning, Claire knocked on my office door again. She looked nervous, more nervous than before. "Noah, what is it?" She hesitated. "I think there's something you need to see." For the first time since joining the company, Claire looked genuinely worried, and the moment I saw the expression on her face, I knew whatever she was about to show me was going to change everything. Claire closed the office door behind her, then checked the hallways through the glass panel. Only after making sure nobody was nearby did she walk toward my desk. That alone made me uncomfortable. Claire wasn't the dramatic type. She was the kind of person who double-checked spreadsheets for fun. If she looked nervous, there was a reason. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated, then placed a tablet in front of me. "Look at the dates." I frowned. The screen showed a series of internal company reports, project reports, performance reviews, board presentations. At first, I didn't understand. Then I noticed something. Several achievements I personally led had Ethan's name attached to them, not mine. I sat up straighter. "What is this?" Claire swallowed. "I found it by accident." I kept scrolling. The further I went, the colder my face became. 1 project, 2 projects, 5 projects, 9 projects. Some reports listed Ethan as a contributor. Others listed him as a project leader. One presentation credited him for a strategy I spent nearly 6 months creating, a strategy that later secured $20 million in investment. My fingers tightened around the tablet. "This isn't possible." Claire nodded slowly. "I thought so too." The room became silent. I opened another file, then another, then another. Each one felt like a punch, small changes, tiny edits, nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, but together they created a completely different story. A story where Ethan wasn't the younger brother learning the business, a story where Ethan was becoming one of the company's key leaders, and my role was slowly shrinking. I looked up. "Who approved these?" Claire didn't answer immediately, which meant she already knew. "Emma." For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. "What?" "Most of the reports go through her office." I stared at her. My chest felt heavy, not because I thought Emma was trying to betray me, because I knew she wasn't. That somehow made it worse. Emma wasn't helping Ethan because she wanted to hurt me. She was helping him because she genuinely believed he deserved it, because somewhere along the way she had started seeing him differently. Claire broke the silence. "There is more." She slid another file across the desk. My stomach immediately sank. Board meeting attendance, private investor dinners, leadership retreats, strategic planning sessions. I wasn't invited to half of them. Ethan was, for nearly 6 months. I felt my heartbeat slow. Every major decision in the company was supposed to involve me. I built the technology. I designed the infrastructure. I managed the engineering teams. Without me, there was no product. Without the product, there was no company. Yet somehow, I was being left out. Quietly, systematically, and I hadn't noticed because I was too busy working, too busy solving problems, too busy believing everyone was on the same side. Claire looked at me carefully. "I think they're preparing him." The words hung in the air. Preparing him. Preparing him for what? I already knew the answer. Leadership, authority, influence, the future. A future that was supposed to belong to me. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly exhausted. Not angry, just tired. Very tired. After a few moments, I asked, "Why are you showing me this?" Claire looked surprised, then smiled slightly. "Because someone should." I stared at her. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Everyone else seemed determined to ignore what was happening. Claire didn't, and that mattered more than she probably realized.
That evening, I stayed in the office late, much later than usual. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. "Emma." I stared at the screen, then answered. "Hey. Are you still working?" "Yeah." "You forgot." My brow furrowed. "Forgot what?" She hesitated, then her voice softened. "Our anniversary." Everything inside me stopped. June 17th. After 6 years, I had forgotten. Not because I didn't care, because my life had become one giant crisis, and somehow our relationship was no longer at the center of it. I rubbed my forehead. "I'm sorry." The silence that followed felt strange, almost sad. Then Emma laughed softly. "It's okay." No, it wasn't okay, because for 6 years I had remembered every anniversary, every birthday, every important date, and now I forgot. Maybe because a part of me already knew something was ending. "We can still have dinner," she said. I looked at the reports covering my desk, the reports proving my own company was slowly being taken from me, the reports carrying Ethan's name, the reports carrying Emma's approval. For a second, I almost said no. Instead, I sighed. "Okay. 7:30? Fine." After hanging up, I remained seated for a long time. Then I gathered the documents and locked them in a drawer. Tomorrow, I will figure out what to do. Tonight, I needed answers from Emma. I arrived at the restaurant first, 7:25. Emma arrived at 7:31, and she wasn't alone. The moment I saw who stepped out of the car beside her, every emotion inside me vanished. Ethan. Of course, Ethan. He smiled the moment he saw me, the same smile, the same friendly expression, the same face that made everyone trust him. And for the first time, I felt something dangerous. Because after months of patience, months of excuses, months of watching my life slowly slip away, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep pretending everything was fine. For a moment, none of us spoke. The restaurant suddenly felt much smaller. Emma seemed to notice my expression. "Don't look at me like that." I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because I genuinely couldn't believe it. "Our anniversary." My voice was calm, too calm. "You brought Ethan." Emma immediately became defensive. "He was nearby." Nearby. Of course he was. These days, Ethan always seemed to be nearby. Nearby during meetings, nearby during business trips, nearby during family dinners, nearby whenever Emma needed someone, nearby whenever I wasn't. Ethan raised both hands. "Relax, Noah. I told her he didn't need to come." The perfect guy. Always the perfect guy. I looked at him, then at Emma, then back at him. "Sit down," I said. Both of them seemed surprised. I smiled. "Really, sit down." We sat. The waiter came, orders were placed, conversation started, or at least they tried. For 20 minutes I mostly listened. Emma talked about the company, Ethan talked about investors. They bounced topics between themselves so naturally that I almost felt like an outsider listening to two coworkers, or two partners. Meanwhile, I barely spoke. Then something happened. The waiter brought wine. As he poured it, Ethan suddenly laughed. "You remember the Morrison deal?" Emma immediately burst out laughing. "Oh God." I frowned. The Morrison deal was one of the company's biggest acquisitions. I had spent 4 months negotiating the technical integration. "What about it?" Emma smiled. "You don't know this." Of course I didn't. The story happened at an investor retreat I hadn't been invited to, the same retreat Claire had shown me in the reports. Emma continued. "Ethan convinced 3 investors not to pull out. If he wasn't there, the deal might have collapsed." She looked genuinely impressed. Ethan acted embarrassed. It wasn't that big of a deal. My chest tightened. The Morrison deal succeeded because my team worked 80-hour weeks, because I solved every integration problem, because I practically lived in the office. Yet the story being told tonight was about Ethan, again. I put my glass down, slowly. Who invited him? The table became quiet. Emma frowned. "What?" "To the investor retreat." She looked confused. "The board? And why wasn't I invited?" Silence. The first real silence of the evening. Emma blinked, then looked away. That was enough as an answer. Because she didn't know, or worse, she had never even asked. For the first time that night, Ethan stopped smiling. The atmosphere changed instantly. Emma leaned forward. "Noah, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" I almost laughed again. Instead, I asked something else. "Emma? What? Do you think Ethan understands you better than I do?" Her face froze immediately. The exact same question from my mother's dinner. The exact same answer that had been haunting me ever since. This time she didn't answer right away, because now she understood why I was asking. "Why are you bringing that up? Just answer." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Emma looked between us, then sighed. "That's not a fair question." There it was. Not a yes, not a no. Because if the answer was obvious, she would have answered immediately, just like she did before. Something inside me finally clicked. Not broke, clicked, like a lock opening. A realization, a truth I had been avoiding. The problem wasn't Ethan, it was Emma. Because Ethan couldn't replace me, not by himself. Someone had to let him. Someone had to keep choosing him, over and over. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A message from Claire. Only 3 words. "Check social media." My stomach immediately tightened. I opened the app and froze. A new post, uploaded 10 minutes ago, by Ethan. The photo showed the 3 of us sitting at the table. Emma laughing, Ethan smiling, me looking away. The caption read, "Great night celebrating with the people who matter most." Thousands of followers had already started commenting. One comment sat near the top. "You and Emma make such a great couple." Another, "Future power couple." Another, "Noah looks like the 3rd wheel." Then another, and another. My hand slowly tightened around the phone. I looked up. Ethan's face changed, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but I caught it, because he knew I had seen it, and I saw the truth behind his smile. He had done it on purpose, just like all those years ago, just like the messages, just like the photos, just like every little jab hidden behind jokes. He wasn't trying to steal my life. He wanted me to watch him steal it. I stood up. Emma looked confused. "Noah?" I looked at her, really looked at her,
and suddenly I realized how exhausted I was. Not angry, not jealous, not heartbroken, exhausted. 6 years, 6 years of giving, 6 years of understanding, 6 years of making excuses, and 6 years of being asked to accept one humiliation after another. Emma stood up too. "Where are you going?" I smiled faintly, then asked a question, a very simple question. "Emma? What? If tonight I walked away," my voice remained calm, "would you follow me?" The restaurant became silent. Emma froze. Ethan froze. Nobody spoke, not even me, because deep down I already knew the answer, and that answer was about to change all 3 of our lives forever.
Emma didn't answer. Not immediately. And that silence was louder than anything she could have said. I watched her eyes. The hesitation, the uncertainty, the confusion, the guilt. Everything was there. Everything except the one thing I needed. A choice. After several seconds, she finally spoke. "Noah." I smiled. A tired smile, because I already understood. If someone truly wants to choose you, they don't need time to think. They don't need to weigh options. They don't need to hesitate. They just choose. The same way she always chose Ethan. The same way she chose him when my mother waited for her. The same way she chose him during company events, family dinners, business trips, investor retreats, again and again and again. The answer had always been there. I was simply the last person willing to see it. I nodded slowly. "It's okay." Emma's face immediately changed. "Noah, that's not what this is." "Then what is it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again, because she didn't know. Or maybe because she knew exactly what it was. Ethan suddenly stood up. "Maybe I should leave." The perfect guy, always arriving at the perfect moment, always saying the perfect thing, always looking like the victim. For years, that act had fooled everyone. Tonight, it only made me tired. I looked at him. "No." Both of them looked surprised. I continued. "Stay." For the first time, Ethan seemed uncomfortable. Good. I wanted him uncomfortable. I wanted both of them uncomfortable. For years, I had been the only one carrying the weight of this situation. Not anymore. I looked directly at Emma. "Do you love him?" The restaurant became completely silent. Emma's eyes widened. "What? You heard me." Her face turned pale. "No." Too fast. Much too fast. The answer sounded rehearsed, like something she had told herself 1,000 times. I nodded. "Then let me ask differently." I pointed toward Ethan. "If he wasn't my brother, if he was just another man, would you still be acting like this?" Emma froze. Ethan looked away, and suddenly nobody had anything to say. Because some questions are impossible to answer honestly, not when the truth destroys everything. 6 years. 6 years were dying right in front of us, and everyone at the table knew it. Emma finally stood up. "Noah, let's go somewhere private." "No." "Please." "No." Her voice became emotional. "Can you stop doing this?" "Doing this?" Interesting. Not Ethan, not the situation, not the humiliation, me. I was the problem again. I stood up slowly, then reached into my pocket. Emma frowned. I placed a small black box on the table. Her eyes widened immediately. I saw recognition, because she knew exactly what it was. The ring. The ring I bought 8 months ago. The ring she never knew existed, because I had been waiting for the company to stabilize, waiting for my mother's health to improve, waiting for the right moment, always waiting. Meanwhile, life kept moving without me. Emma stared at the box. Her hands trembled. "Noah." I pushed it toward her. I was going to propose. Neither Emma nor Ethan spoke. For the first time all evening, I had their complete attention. Funny how that works. The moment you're leaving, people finally listen. I carried that ring for 8 months. I wanted my mother to see us get engaged. Emma's immediately filled with tears. Good. Maybe now she understood. Maybe now she finally saw what her choices had cost. I kept making excuses for you, to my friends, my family, myself. Every word felt lighter than the one before, like putting down a weight I'd carried for years. Do you know the worst part? Emma shook her head. No. The worst part is that I don't even hate you. Her tears finally started falling, because hatred would have been easier. Hatred means there's still something left. Anger means there's still passion. What I felt now was emptiness, and emptiness is much harder to fix. I looked at Ethan, then smiled. The first genuine smile I'd had all night. "Take care of her." His face immediately changed, because he realized what was happening. "Noah!" "I mean it," I said. I picked up my jacket, then looked at Emma one final time. The woman I once thought I would spend the rest of my life with. The woman who no longer looked certain about anything. "You don't have to choose anymore, because I'm making the choice for you." and for the first time in 6 years, I felt free. Then I turned around and walked away. Behind me, I heard Emma call my name. I didn't stop, because some endings only hurt if you keep looking back, and I was finally done looking back. Outside the restaurant, cold air hit my face. For several seconds, I simply stood there, breathing, feeling strangely empty. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Claire. How did it go? I stared at the screen, then typed 4 words. It's finally over. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then another message arrived. Good. I frowned. Good. A second message followed. Because you're about to need all your attention. My stomach tightened. What happened? Several seconds passed. Then Claire sent a photograph. The moment I opened it, every trace of relief disappeared. It was a confidential board document, a document that wasn't supposed to exist. At the top was a single title, Succession Plan, and directly beneath it, in bold letters, Future CEO Candidate, Ethan Carter. Underneath that, Transition Timeline, 12 months. I stared at the screen, unable to move or speak, because suddenly I understood. The relationship wasn't the only thing being taken from me. The company was next. I stood outside the restaurant for nearly a minute. Cars passed, people laughed. The city kept moving. Meanwhile, my world seemed to have stopped. I read the document again. The words didn't change. 12 months. Not 5 years, not some distant possibility. This wasn't an idea. It was a plan, a real plan. And somehow, everyone knew except me. My phone rang. Emma. I rejected the call. A second later, it rang again. Rejected. By the 6th call, I simply switched the phone off. For tonight, I didn't care what Emma wanted to say. For tonight, I only cared about one question. How long? How long had this been happening behind my back? The next morning, I arrived at the office before sunrise. The building was almost empty. Only the cleaning staff were inside. Claire was already waiting. She looked exhausted. Did you sleep? I asked. No, me neither. She handed me a folder, a real folder this time. Printed documents, board meeting notes, internal communications, voting records. The deeper I looked, the uglier things became. At first, Ethan's name appeared occasionally, then more frequently, then everywhere. Board members praised his leadership. Investors praised his communication skills. Senior managers praised his vision. And every single time I saw one of those compliments, I found the project they were talking about, and it had originated from me, my work, my systems, my team, my strategies. Someone had simply changed the name attached to them. Claire sat across from me. There is more. I almost laughed. There was always more. She slid another paper forward. This one hit harder, much harder, because at the bottom was a signature, Emma Reynolds. My stomach dropped. What is this? Claire hesitated, then answered softly. Recommendation letter. Emma was recommending Ethan for expanded executive authority, describing him as one of the company's most valuable leaders, a key figure in future growth, a natural successor. Every sentence felt heavier than the last, not because Ethan didn't deserve praise, but because Emma wrote it. Emma, the woman who had watched me build this company from nothing, the woman who knew exactly who created every important thing in the company, yet she signed it anyway. I suddenly remembered something, a conversation from nearly a year ago. Emma and I were sitting in her office. She looked exhausted. Sometimes I wish you were better at politics. I laughed. What does that mean? She smiled. You solve problems. Isn't that good? It is, she said, then added something I barely thought about at the time. But people don't always reward the person who solves the problem. Now I finally understood. She wasn't warning me. She was describing what was happening. Around 9 o'clock, Emma arrived. I knew because the entire floor seemed to wake up. People greeted her, meetings started, phones rang, the usual routine. Then came the knock. My office door opened. Emma stepped inside. The moment she saw me, her expression changed. Relief, then sadness, then guilt. Noah. I didn't answer. She closed the door. We need to talk. I continued reading. For a few seconds, she simply stood there, then slowly sat down. I called you 31 times. Still nothing. Can you at least look at me? I finally raised my eyes, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel anything. No anger, no excitement, no affection, nothing. Emma noticed immediately. Her face went pale, because she had seen me angry before. She had seen me hurt, but she had never seen me indifferent. and indifference terrified her. Her voice became quieter. "About last night," I interrupted. "When were you going to tell me?" She blinked. "What?" I slid the succession document across the desk. The color drained from her face instantly. She recognized it, which meant it was real. For several seconds she couldn't speak. That was all the answer I needed. "You knew." "Noah, you knew," I insisted. "It isn't what you think," she said. I laughed, a genuine laugh, because those words are always the same. It isn't what you think, as if reality somehow becomes better with explanation. I tapped the document. "Then explain." Emma stared at it, then lowered her head. "The board asked me for an evaluation. So you recommended Ethan." "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" Her voice cracked. "They said investors liked him." I smiled. "They do. They said he connects with people, and he has leadership potential." Every answer seemed to make her more uncomfortable, because neither of us were discussing the real issue. Finally, I asked, "The company succeeds because of who?" No answer. I waited. Emma looked at me, then away, then back at me again. "The company succeeds because of many people." I nodded. Of course, the politician's answer, the safe answer, the answer that avoids saying the truth. I stood and walked toward the window, looked down at the city below, then asked another question. "If I leave," her entire body froze. "If I leave today," I turned around. "What happens to Reynolds Technologies?" For the first time since entering the office, Emma had no answer. Because deep down she knew exactly what would happen, and she realized I was genuinely considering it, not threatening, not complaining, not negotiating. Leaving. Actually leaving. And suddenly the future she had taken for granted no longer seemed so certain. Meanwhile, on the top floor boardroom, Ethan was smiling, because in his mind, everything was finally falling into place. The board and investors loved him, the employees admired him, Emma trusted him, the family supported him, and Noah was isolated, alone, outnumbered. What Ethan didn't know was that the smartest people in the company had never followed Emma, and they had never followed him. They had followed Noah. And if Noah walked out that door, he wouldn't be leaving alone. The first cracks in Reynolds Technologies were about to appear, and nobody saw them coming. I looked at Emma for a long time, then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because at that moment I finally understood something. Emma wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control. For years, she always knew where I was. She knew I would answer her calls, solve her problems, and no matter how badly she treated me, I would stay. But now, I was leaving, and for the first time in her life, she couldn't stop me. I turned around and walked toward the exit. "Noah!" Emma's voice echoed through the hallway. For years, hearing her call my name was enough to make me stop. Not this time. I kept walking. Behind me, I could hear her heels hitting the marble floor. She caught my arm. "Please!" I looked down at her hand. The same hand I had held for 6 years. The same hand that recommended Ethan. Slowly, I removed it. Emma's eyes immediately turned red. "You can't leave like this." I smiled. "Why not?" Her lips trembled. "Because we need to talk." I laughed. For years, I had wanted exactly that. To talk. To explain. To tell her how much she was hurting me. To tell her how tired I was. To tell her I was losing myself. But every time, there was always something more important. Usually Ethan. Now, suddenly she wanted to talk. It was almost funny. Talk about what? Her mouth opened, then closed, because this time she didn't know what to say. I nodded. Exactly. Then I walked away, and this time she didn't follow. The next morning, I submitted my resignation. The entire executive floor was shocked. Several department heads called me. Investors called me. Even my father called me. Nobody could understand why I was leaving. Nobody except Emma. 3 days later, Emma appeared at my apartment. She stood outside for almost an hour. When I opened the door, she looked exhausted. "Noah." I said nothing. She held out a folder. "Come back." I glanced at it. A promotion, a salary increase, partnership shares, everything I had worked years to earn. Everything she refused to give me before. Now, suddenly it was mine. I pushed the folder back. "No." She looked stunned. "No? I don't want it anymore." This time I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Because she finally understood something. I wasn't negotiating. I was done. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Claire. At that time, she was still working inside Emma's company. "Coffee?" she asked. I laughed. "That's random." "Not really," she answered. Claire had been one of the smartest executives in Emma's company. For years, she worked beside me. She knew exactly who was doing the real work.
While everyone praised Emma, Claire saw the truth. While everyone admired Ethan, Claire saw the incompetence. When we met, she didn't look like herself. She was frustrated. "He doesn't listen," she said. "He changes strategies every week. He ignores market research. He fires experienced managers. He hires friends. He thinks confidence is competence." I nodded. That sounded exactly like Ethan. Claire placed a folder on the table. "This is going to collapse in less than a year." I looked at her and said, "So leave." She hesitated. "Leave?" I nodded. "If you stay there, you'll just be fixing my replacement," I added. That line hit her harder than I expected, because she understood immediately there was nothing left for her in Emma's company anymore. Not respect, not future, not even purpose. Then she leaned forward and said, "Only if you start your own company." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "A new company," she answered. I blinked. She smiled. "I'll gladly work for you." For the first time in months, I felt excited. Not angry, not heartbroken, not exhausted, excited. Claire leaned forward. "You built Emma's company." I remained silent. She continued, "You know it, I know it, the investors know it." I sighed. "What are you saying?" Claire smiled. "I'm saying build your own." 2 days later, Claire resigned. Emma didn't fight it. She was too focused on Ethan, too focused on stabilizing control inside the company, too focused on proving I was replaceable. But she didn't realize something yet. Claire wasn't just my employee, she was the only person who fully understood how my systems worked. And when she left, she didn't leave alone. She was bringing something with her. Documents, models, structures, the blueprint of everything I built. And more importantly, she came to me. Meanwhile, back at Emma's company, things were already unstable, but she ignored it because she was preparing something else, a public announcement, a partnership reveal, and a stability move for investors. That move had a name, Ethan Carter. She didn't see it as betrayal, she saw it as a strategy, a way to calm the board, a way to replace uncertainty, a way to prove the company could survive without me. And so the engagement decision was made. Within weeks, everything was prepared. Investors invited, media coverage arranged, family approval pushed forward, public image polished, even me, I was invited. Ethan was presented as the future face of the company. Emma stood beside him, not because she trusted him, but because she needed a symbol, someone controllable, someone safe while she moves up to be a board member, someone who wouldn't walk away like I did. And that ceremony night, after I saw my girlfriend announcing her engagement to my brother, I walked out smiling. Not angry, not sad, just smiling while thinking of the future. My company started with 6 people, then 10, then 20, then 50. Most of them were former employees, people who knew who had actually built Emma's success, people who were tired of Ethan, people who wanted leadership instead of ego. In 1 year, we would become a serious competitor. In 2 years, we would become a threat. And then came the Jensen Project, the biggest consulting contract in the state. $80 million, 5-year partnership, national exposure, international investors watching. Whoever won it would instantly become a market leader.
My team worked for 2 months. Every number verified, every risk analyzed, every projection stress tested, every scenario modeled. Claire personally reviewed everything 3 times. We were ready. The day of proposal submission, Emma's company arrived with confidence. Ethan looked relaxed, too relaxed, the kind of relaxed that comes from not understanding the danger. The next morning, Claire entered my office carrying a stack of documents. "Good news." I looked up. "Is there finally good news?" She laughed. "Actually, there is." She placed the papers in front of me. "The Jensen Project." I raised an eyebrow. That project was worth nearly $80 million. For months, dozens of companies had been fighting for it, including Emma's company. I opened the file, then froze. "Wait," Claire nodded. "We got it." I stared at her. "We won? We crushed everyone." A smile slowly appeared on my face. The Jensen Project wasn't just money, it was prestige. The winner would immediately become one of the biggest consulting firms in the state. Claire sat down. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "Emma's company was the favorite." I blinked. "They lost badly," Claire said. I couldn't help laughing. Claire looked at me. "You know why they lost?" I already had a guess. "Tell me." She crossed her arms. "Because the proposal they submitted was terrible." I laughed again. Not because I was happy, but because I knew exactly why. I built most of their strategy department, most of their systems, most of their client acquisition structure. When I left, all of that left with me. At first, nobody noticed. Then small problems appeared. Then bigger ones. Then disasters. And now, the consequences were arriving. 2 days later, the news exploded. Emma's company had lost 3 major contracts in a single week. Their stock dropped nearly 12%. Investors were furious, employees were panicking, and social media was having a field day, especially after someone posted a comparison. Reynolds Technologies lost 3 major contracts. Carter Inc. won the Jensen project, revenue up 180%, new offices opening, expansion announced. The contrast was brutal. That evening my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? After a moment of silence, Noah. It was Emma, of course. I leaned back. What do you want? Her voice sounded exhausted. When did this happen? I smiled. What? Your company. I looked around my office, the employees still working, even the company logo on the wall. The life I built without her. When did it become so big? I laughed softly. The same time your company started falling apart. The line went silent. Then she whispered, Was it really because of you? I almost laughed. After all this time, she was finally asking the right question. Emma, yes? Who do you think built half your company? Heavy silence followed, because she had no answer. The following week, something unexpected happened. I received a call from my mother. Noah? Yeah? We need to talk. That tone immediately made me figure it out. What happened? My mother sighed. Your brother is here. I closed my eyes. Ethan, of course. What does he want? Can you come home? I looked at Claire. She immediately knew. Family drama? I nodded. She laughed. Good luck.
An hour later, I arrived. The moment I entered the house, I saw Ethan sitting in the living room. For the first time in my life, he didn't look confident. He looked tired, nervous, almost scared. My father stood up. Noah. I nodded, then sat down across from Ethan. Nobody spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. What do you want? Ethan swallowed, then looked at me. We need your help. I laughed immediately. My mother frowned. My father looked nervous, because everybody knew how ridiculous that sounded. For years, I was the invisible son, the backup plan, the disappointment. Now suddenly they needed help? I leaned back. My help? Ethan nodded. The company is in trouble. I smiled. I know. His face turned red. I continued. You stole my position. You took my projects and my girlfriend. Then I smiled again. And now you want my help? The room became completely quiet. Ethan lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he couldn't look me in the eyes. Then something happened that I never expected. My mother started crying. I immediately turned toward her. She wiped her eyes, then looked at me. Noah. Her voice trembled. We were wrong. The room froze. Even my father looked shocked, despite his hope to save the company he invested in heavily. My mother continued. We didn't mean to hurt you. Nobody moved. For years, she never admitted it. Never. But today, she finally said it. And somehow, hearing those words didn't make me happy. It only made me tired. Very tired. Because some apologies arrive years too late. I stood up. Everyone looked at me, including Ethan. Then I said quietly, I forgive you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked relieved. Ethan looked stunned. Then I continued, but forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were, or am going to help. The room fell silent again, because they finally understood. I wasn't coming back. Not to the family, not to Emma, not to the old life. That version of Noah Carter was gone forever. And in that moment, they truly realized what they had lost.
3 days later, Emma finally learned the brutal truth she ignored for years. It started with a board meeting. The atmosphere inside the conference room was suffocating. Investors, executives, department heads, everyone looked exhausted. The company's stock had dropped another 9%. 2 more major clients had terminated their contracts, and worst of all, nobody knew how to stop the bleeding. Emma sat at the head of the table. She looked afraid. We need answers. Nobody spoke. Her voice hardened. Now! Finally, an older executive cleared his throat. Emma looked at him. The man hesitated, then said something nobody had dared say before. The problem isn't the market. The problem is Noah. Emma froze. What? The executive pushed several reports across the table. You should read these. Emma grabbed the papers. The deeper she read, the paler her face became. Client acquisition systems, risk management structures, revenue forecasting models, internal efficiency programs. Almost every major system keeping the company alive had been designed by me. She knew I did a lot of things, but not that deep. The same man everyone treated like he was replaceable, the same man she abandoned, the same man she humiliated, the same man she chose Ethan over.
Page after page, proof kept appearing, and then came the worst document, a report from 5 years ago, the year the company experienced explosive growth. Emma opened it, then froze. Creator, Noah Carter. Her breathing stopped. No way! The executive nodded. It was him. Another executive sighed. Most of us knew. Emma looked up. The room became quiet. Then another executive spoke. Everyone at the senior level knew. Emma felt cold, very cold. You knew Noah was carrying this company? Nobody answered, because they didn't need to. Their silence was enough. That night, Emma sat alone in her office. The city lights reflected through the windows. For years, she believed she built everything herself. For years, she believed Noah was simply helping. For years, she thought he would always be there. Now she realized something horrifying. She hadn't built an empire. She had inherited one, and then destroyed it. Her phone vibrated. A notification. Social media. Normally, she ignored it. Tonight, she opened it. Immediately, she regretted it. The headline was trending. Carter Inc. becomes fastest growing firm in the city. Below it was a photograph. Me standing beside Claire. Both smiling, both successful and happy. Emma stared at the image, then zoomed in. Claire was looking at me differently. Not like an employee, not like an assistant, like a woman looking at a man she admired, maybe even loved. Emma suddenly felt something she hadn't felt in years. Jealousy. Pure jealousy. Meanwhile, Ethan was having problems of his own. Big problems. For years, he had enjoyed the rewards of being the golden child. Now he was experiencing the consequences. The board wanted answers. Investors wanted answers. Even employees wanted answers. And Ethan had none. Because the truth was simple. He wasn't me, and everyone was starting to notice.
1 week later, the first public scandal exploded. An anonymous employee leaked internal emails, thousands of them. Within hours, they were everywhere. News websites, business blogs, social media. One email became especially famous, a message from months ago. I was warning management about a major risk. Back then, management ignored him, but now Ethan dismissed the warning, and the company lost nearly $40 million. The internet had a field day. Comments flooded every platform. Wait, Noah predicted this months ago? He literally saved this company dozens of times. So Ethan was taking credit? The wrong brother got the promotion. The wrong brother got the girl, too. That last comment received nearly 8,000 likes. Ethan snapped. He was the target, not me, him, and he couldn't handle it. That evening, he stormed into Emma's office. Do something. Emma looked up. What? Fix this. Emma stared at him, then laughed. Actually laughed. Ethan froze. What is funny? Emma stood up. Her eyes were cold, colder than he had ever seen. Fix this? She walked toward him. You spent years telling me Noah wasn't important. Ethan's face changed. You agreed and chose me. Emma laughed again, a bitter laugh. That was my biggest mistake. The words hit Ethan like a truck. His face went pale, because for the first time, Emma wasn't protecting him. She wasn't defending him. She wasn't choosing him. Emma! His voice cracked. She interrupted immediately. No. He froze. Emma looked directly into his eyes. You know what the funny part is? I used to think Noah was lucky to have me. Her voice trembled slightly. Now I realize I was lucky to have him. Ethan didn't know what to say, because deep down, he knew it was true. That same evening, Claire and I were celebrating. The Jensen project had officially launched. The numbers were even better than expected. We had just secured another major contract. Everything was moving perfectly. Claire raised her glass. To success. I smiled. To survival. She laughed, then looked at me, a little longer than normal. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she asked quietly, Do you ever miss her? I already knew who she meant. Emma. I thought for a moment, then answered honestly. I miss who I thought she was. Claire smiled sadly. That's a painful answer. Usually the truthful ones are, I said. She nodded, then changed the subject. But I noticed something. The disappointment in her eyes. Small, almost invisible, but there. And now I started wondering if there was a reason. Across the city, Emma sat alone in her apartment. The silence felt unbearable. For years, she always had someone around. Employees, investors, friends, Ethan. Now she felt completely alone. Her phone rested beside her, open to my profile. She stared at his picture, then at Claire's, then back at mine. A realization slowly formed, one that terrified her. Noah wasn't waiting anymore. He wasn't suffering anymore. He wasn't chasing her anymore. He was moving on, and if he moved on completely, she would never get him back. Never.